Welcome to My Big Safety Challenge, a podcast all about stories of safety leadership, presented by Dale Carnegie and the Board of Certified Safety Professionals.
So, John, one of the things that safety professionals live with on a regular basis, day by day, is how do I guide people to make adjustments and change to what we're doing? Because that's oftentimes the role that they have to do to encourage their folks to, as a group or as individuals, make change. Well, we have a person today that lives in that realm and is used to helping people do that. So we're going to be able to draw from his expertise and experience.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have this conversation. So today we're welcoming David Musgrave, who is the Senior Vice President for Thought Leadership and Innovation. So if you're a company in that space where you are looking at potentially a plateau, this is going to be a conversation you want to listen to.
So David, first of all, thank you for being here. How did you ever get to this role that you're in? Could you kind of give us a little bit of your journey?
Happy to, and good to see you both, and thanks for everybody listening at home as well. How did I get into this? So I was actually managing some treatment centers up in Canada, mental health, and a woman that worked for me, a psychologist, she left me, she abandoned me, and I was quite upset about that. She was just really good at her job, and I quite like working with her. But I said, "You're going to regret this. You're going to go work in safety? That's crazy. I can't believe you're going to do that." And she's a typical clinician, therapizing people, doing assessment work. This is what I did as well. And then I ran into her about a year later, and she was so happy. And she loved her job, and she traveled the world. And she just sort of told me about it. So I actually went to go work for her. And then my boss
said, "You'll regret this."
That's exactly what he said. That's exactly what he said. And my boss at that time, he wrote a lot of psychology books and was quite well known, a little bit famous. And so I really thought maybe I am making a mistake here, But what sold me really was you can help a bunch of people in one go, rather than kind of one at a time. So similar bent around helping people, stay safe and well, but more sort of mass audience was the drive for me there. So I did have to drop a few strengths that were strengths in the world of psychology and therapizing people, dulcet tones and quiet voices, and that's not a strength, when you're in front of a room of executives or on a stage. Talking to a few hundred people. So I learned, like most safety professionals, to get better at certain things that maybe I wasn't that great at to begin with.
So I do need to know, did your boss end up quitting and coming to work
for
you?
And no, he did not. Not for me.
That was what I was thinking as well. So.
Yeah, that would have bothered me not to do that. So what did you find then when you started shifting from the mental health world to safety? What were some similarities you saw, maybe some differences that you faced?
Sure. I think the similarities were really around, valuing people and getting the most out of people. My specialty way back when, this is 20 years ago, was in autism spectrum disorder, neurodiversity, things like that. And it really was then and still now about how do you get the most out of a person or out of a team? How do you just sort of add a little fertilizer there and see what we can come up with together. And I really kind of stuck with that as what I do personally, for a living, is how can we get executives to dig in deeper? How can we get supervisors maybe to see things a little bit differently? In both cases, they're doing a great job already, of course, but how do you get them to go to that next level? And sort of painting that picture for what that looks like. What I have seen is both in the world of psychology and in the world of business, is that when people think they're doing a great job, but they're probably just doing a pretty good job. And once you show them what could be done in safety, they do it. These are driven people that know how to make the world go round and whatnot. It's more just shining the headlights further out in front so they can see, hey, some other people are doing this. I actually think you could do a better job than they could. What do you think? Are you up for it? So that's some of the similarities there. And the differences are really around helping thousands of people in one go to have just a better life, not even just safety, but just culture, and work for better leadership people that are updating their skills. All of that stuff it's very rewarding to do that, to know that you've helped other people, create a better situation for a lot of other people.
And I would just call your attention to, there's a statement you made there that really fits with one of Carnegie's principles, and that is to throw down a challenge. So you said, there's other people doing this. I wonder if you might be up to this. And that there's something about that triggers people to want to go after it.
Yeah, and I think for me is I would agree with you, David. I think, can you talk to our listeners a little bit about this? So as you're throwing down that challenge, so to speak, the difference between, and we've talked a little bit about it in some of the episodes this season, good to great is really some discretionary effort. And how are you enabling that discretionary effort? Some of the tips that you might have as we're throwing down the challenge of, how do you create a catalyst there?
It's a really good question, because it gets into kind of the science of human motivation and what drives people to do anything. Human beings don't do anything for no reason. And so when you tap into what that is, and it's not the same thing for every person, but when you're talking to folks at, let's say, at an executive level, when they know that there's more that could be done personally, not as a company, but I'm not sort of hitting on all cylinders, and I really could be. That's definitely a motivator. So it definitely ties into what you're saying, Merle, around like kind of laying down the challenge. And you know what? It's okay if people don't want to pick up the ball and take that challenge, or maybe that challenge is too much for people right now. Myself and my team are always super respectful about, hey, these are people that created a giant business and great wealth, and it's up to them where they want to go in safety. It's not up to me and what my vision is, but I do quite like to get people thinking about what could a vision be for your next step, or where you want to leave this place long term. But yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about what are the drivers and motivators for people at different levels, and depending on who you are, sometimes like particular people, the COO of a business, a board of directors, what is it that they are maybe not digging into? And you just sort of put it out there as a little bit of a tickle to see, is that something you're interested in talking about? Because I have some friends that do a lot of good work in this space if you would like to hear more. But I think it's important to not be sort of a turnoff for people and say, here's what you have to do. Here's what everybody's doing. You should do it or else. And I see a lot of people kind of go down the wrong road with that. People in business want their own, they want to own it, and they want it to be their own baby and not some programmatic thing that they bought from some company. It's really about, we're really good at this. We just need to put some roots down further so that we have good, stability here. And we really mean it when we say we're going to, value safe work.
Another principle, ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Because the way you described it, there are people that feel like you're just commanding them. There's something that pushes back and resists that, whereas you're set at the stage where they are making the choice to go after that. But we see people that are trying to initiate safety directives that will help people. They know they're good, and they struggle with that sometimes. Now, I know that's very general because you're dealing with a lot of different factors. But overall, what kind of advice could you give to help the supervisor, the safety director? What kind of advice could you give to help them as they're trying to lead a group of people to make changes in the way they do things to improve safety?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say a lot of the work that we do at Dekra is on this. So it is on change management. It's less sexy to talk about change management, to be honest, because it is seemingly very straightforward. But the reality is, if you don't have the buy-in of certain people, you can talk about safety all day long and what your goal is and what you want to have happen. But if you don't have a good quorum that is in agreement with this, and even beyond agreement, has passion to put behind it, and will tell other people what they must do as well. I'm asking you to move differently. I'm telling you this is what we're going to do as a business, and everybody will line up and get behind it. So a lot of the work that we do is to often help amplify the voice of safety professionals. Not always. Sometimes it's to maybe help the safety professional a little bit to have a voice that has a different message. Could be that. So it's different every time. But it is a lot about creating that motivation so that you get just good passion and good energy. And not just for today, kind of in a good call or a good meeting or a good discussion. I don't care about that. We've all been on calls where everybody gets excited. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, what are we going to do next? Like, how's the spaghetti going to stick to the wall? So we're big on, if we can get some agreement with people with big jobs about what they want done, just listening. So I heard what you said. You said you wanted to do this. Let's grab that nugget and then structurally turn that into something so that their idea isn't just an idea anymore. It's actually baked into the business where many people are going to execute on what was said there. And I call this putting your fingerprint on the business. There's a lot of executives that don't have their fingerprint on the business. They just sort of go along with safety, or they really do care passionately about safety, but they might not sort of own it, dig in deep, ask hard questions. So I quite love when an executive goes to visit a site with a little bit of a different fire in their belly, so that they're not just asking the sort of platitude questions and taking, they're taking the shiny floor tour, don't look over there, look over here, this kind of thing. Instead, no, I'm going to dig in with frontline people and find out who runs this place and how's that working for you? And is there anything else you think we should do to make it even better? Like, what's not working? So just an authenticity and a reality. I think all that stuff plays well. And that's what good safety looks like, is when everybody's all in all the time and not holding back and thinking it's someone else's job or I'm not qualified to talk about this.
Are there strategies that you see, David? And so there's a lot of safety professionals listening to the podcast now thinking, this makes sense. I'm all on board, but I'm struggling to get my senior leaders, my C-suite leaders to see what we're chasing. Any strategies or tips? How would you go about starting to move that message upward and so that it becomes actionable with resources?
Yeah, well, there's lots of things that come to mind, that's for sure. In terms of a sort of quick tip, I would say talk less about sort of safety jargon. Safety people often make senior operations people feel kind of a little bit less than, and they don't mean to do that. But as soon as you're talking over somebody else's head, they tend to go, okay, I'll leave this with you. You seem to know a lot about this, and so I'll step back. It's very subconscious how it happens, but the more real you can make a situation, I think the better it goes. And save those conversations, with the technical stuff for technical people that need to be involved in that stuff. I would as well, when you look way up top at the company, I would be looking for very senior safety professionals to engage at the C-suite level on strategy and saying, I would like to have a meeting, a couple of days where we're going to actually update our safety strategy. And so that's where you create that buy-in. It's some of my favorite work to do because it just makes all the other work go so much easier. Because this isn't a safety professional's ideas on paper now. It's the COO's idea. It's the CEO's idea. I had done one of these. Well, I do these a lot, but I had done one of these where I thought it was interesting that the CEO had said that he would come by for 20 minutes to sort of engage the group, and then the COO and others would take it from there. But he stayed for 2 hours because he was engaged. And it's just a way for his passion to be unleashed in the conversation. And so people are writing down what he says to say, okay, well, that's part of the strategy. We're baking it in. It just carries more weight now that it's the whole group instead of this sort of safety, arm of the business that's creating some things there. Safety people have lots of great ideas, but the great ideas really come to life when operations people bless them.
Can you help us with how do you move the C-suite folks? Because their day-to-day sometimes is very transactional and focused. In safety, where you really feel like you get the gains, and this is absolutely your background, is that relational, is getting folks to buy in. Is there any tips as you're working with these executives to kind of move them from transactional to relational objectives?
I'd say start with yourself. And are you there as a safety professional, or are you there as a member of this team that has value to offer? And in different countries, that shakes out in different ways. Like, I'm just be honest, the value for a safety professional is different in different countries. What they get paid, what audience in a room they get, it's different. And so you got to look at, where am I now? And then how can I create that engagement as a peer? I think too often safety people are trying to get time with people with big jobs. Expect time. And so really change the way that you go at this, not in an egotistical way, but I'm a person that can help. You hired me to help, and this is how I help. And so ask for big things, not little things, is a good place to start, I think, rather than I'm a person that works here as do many people, and I'm just here to do my job and this kind of thing. I'll give you an example. Sometimes safety people will shy away from like commenting on culture or leadership. I think it's a mistake. The best safety professionals I ever met are ones that go right in there and say, I think you got a cultural issue here. We should talk about it. Does this leader need development? A lot of safety people think that's none of their business. That's for somebody else. I'm like, well, somebody else isn't doing it. So that means it's okay, for you to check in here. I know for your listeners, this may be, of course, but it's good to really check and see, where do I hold back if I'm a safety professional or an operations leader? Where do I hold back and feel like this isn't my place, to step in here? But the only way you go from great to exceptional is when everybody does that and calls it out. I was on a meeting the other day, very large global business, and the COO of that business runs a governance call once a month, safety, right? All the presidents are on, everybody talks. And to see the difference in how that call has changed from 2 years ago to now is shocking to see the difference. So people will intervene and say, I think we should change the tone here because this does sound a little bit blamey on what's happened here. I feel like we're kind of going back to what we were doing in the past versus where we're going now and in the future. So they call each other out. And it's a bit, these are high level people. So it's a bit provocative to do that, to call out a president and say, what else you got? Bring it. But they do. They do it. And then the conversation goes back to where it should be, more that new view of safety, looking at systems, looking at the leadership team as well, around what can we do to keep people safe versus how come other people aren't doing something.
So one of the things that I'm thinking about here, David, is you have a breadth of exposure to lots of industries and lots of different populations, even globally. How much do you see the siloed thinking, both at the safety professional level and maybe even the organizational or operational level, prevent the progress that you're talking about, where it's almost like you mentioned, I'm just going to stay in my box? Do you see that?
Yeah, I think it's natural when you call people by departments. It's a natural kind of human tendency to sort of, well, here's what I do, and what you see, good safety is done with great partnership with other folks. I would say there's a bit of a trend now internationally, particularly here in North America, though, around HR folks partnering better with safety and digging into some things that are kind of common ground. We haven't seen that to the level that we're seeing that these days.
What difference do you think that brings when that takes place?
I think it's a true valuing of people, and it's not a competition about HR's got all this leadership training they need to roll out, and safety's fighting for the wheel to try to roll out their training. I'm like, why don't you just do one training together if you're going to do training? Why don't you figure out how this is about we're developing a person to be better and make sure they have all the bits that they need instead of the different silos, like you said. We see this in HOP as well. There's a little bit of I wouldn't say it's a trend, but we're seeing a lot of folks hire like a HOP guru internally in a business. Nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't recommend it, but nothing wrong with that. But is that person integrated into the team? That it's not, we're not going to do HOP now. HOP is going to be something, if we chose to, be part of how we do safety going forward. So it's just like adding a turbo into your engine, but we don't need a new engine. And so there's a lot of bolt-on stuff that happens, I think, in businesses where this becomes quite inefficient and overwhelming. When we interview supervisors, they say, I can't get my job done. I don't even know what I'm not doing. There's so many things that are asked of me. So anything that we can do to help just bring that down to a different level, I think it helps to calm the fire, if you want.
Notice in our pre-call, you talked about people that they would sometimes come back and report after going to one of these meetings. They would say something like, well, you win some, you lose some, and you had some interesting observations about that, of people trying to achieve different things. Could you talk to us about that a bit?
So, when it comes to safety, we don't want to lose a whole lot. So I think there's some kind of safety platitudes that people say. I do keep a running slide. My colleagues tease me about this. A running slide that's called the Dinosaur Safety Sentiments.
Oh, okay. Let's hear some of these.
If any of your listeners would like to have that, they're welcome to contact me. But it's dumb things that smart people say, including me. Everyone has something. Oh, I wish I could get that one back. So it's normal, but you'll have people say things like, if we just focus on the little things, the big things will take care of themselves. Okay, but that's just not true. Yep. Not. This is the thing. It sounds nice though on a greeting card, but these are sort of throwaway things that sometimes people say, and I like to say, no, let's not follow that. Let's talk about the science of safety and how you actually get good things going here. So to come back to your focus on challenge, Merle, I will call it out. I will challenge. I was in a boardroom not too long ago, and I was speaking about something. And so somebody in that room said, well, David, you would have us all in, proper hard hats, helmets, if you had your way, even while we're sitting here at this table. And everyone laughed. And I said, isn't that great? Isn't that funny? I said, yeah. I said, I'm just going to stop you right now because you are saying that because you feel uncomfortable about what I just asked you to do. That's why you're saying that. It's good to have a laugh, and I certainly, with me, you'll get lots. I try not to take myself too seriously in all the work that we do here, but people do that all the time, and it's to tell the other group, like, this guy's crazy. He's asking us to get to this next level. That is just it's outrageous. We could never do it, and so I have to stop that when someone does that, because the person sitting at the head of the table might think he's correct.
That's right.
That this is crazy. And it's like, no, this is your new next level.
Yeah,
that we're talking about here.
See, but this is now we're hitting some nerves here, right here.
Yeah, and I think what I liken it to is you want me to live in a bubble. That's the other one. Is, well, if you had your way, we would all live in a bubble and nothing bad would happen. And in reality, what that is it's a deflection. I really like how you put that, David. It's a deflection of, I'm not willing to go to where you're looking to take us. And so if you can recognize that, I want to come back to your human organizational performance comment, which I think is absolutely true. One of my mentors talks about, if you do these things, people, planet, profit comes. If you can put your people first, if you have planet at stake, profit will come. The integration of that human and organizational performance that permeates through other parts of the organization, the hazard of siloing it or subdividing it. Can you give us maybe like a case example? Because I know you've got one where this is what it looks like done right. This is what it looks like when you compartmentalize it.
Yeah, so you'll sometimes see there'll be a person that's hired to sort of look after human performance. Nothing wrong with that at all. That's great. But they'll start to be viewed a little bit sometimes as kind of a mad scientist that's rolling out some training, and it does seem like it's in a silo or a vacuum. And so this will get old very quickly for people. It is like, people often talk about the flavor of the month and all that, and which I think is interesting, because flavor of the month, you know what flavor of the month means? Flavor of the month means you didn't have the leadership horsepower to make this stick. That's what flavor of the month is. We said we were going to do something, and we didn't stick with it. So we'll call the thing a flavor of the month. And that's an easy thing to do. And as a deflection,
it takes it off of us.
That's right. It's normal for that to happen, but that's where you go into that challenge again. And you say, do you think you can do this? If you don't think you can do this, you shouldn't do it. But to answer the question specifically about HOP, when we do HOP integration with a company, it's the company people that are doing the integration. We're just leading the science. We're saying, I wouldn't do that this way. If I were you, I would do it this way. And so we're steering from a change management point of view to make sure that you get massive efficacy. About 50% of the businesses that ring us, specific to HOP, it's to leverage things that didn't go well in the past, we'll say. So several million was spent to have a HOP integration or do whatever they were doing. And it just didn't stick anywhere. And CEO was saying, I don't know, we spent all this money, so I don't even know what it is. And I said, well, that means you're doing it wrong. Yeah. It's supposed to be integrated. And integrated means that the people that are the hardest working people in the business don't have to think about, I should do a HOP trick. it's part of my day. It's built into what I do today, and it totally makes sense. And it's not this push against, or you have to. It's like, this makes my life easier. It's less likely I'm going to make a mistake, all that good stuff. So when it's sensical, and you had, frontline people as well co-create this, and so it's not created upstairs and sprayed down, on everybody. It's the orchestration of how you do the hop or whatever you're trying to do differently. Who needs to be in the room here? Do the unions need to be in the room to weigh in so that they're not thinking you guys are insane? What are you thinking to do here? Well, maybe we are, but what do you think? Like, let's talk about it. So I think it's the coordination, I think, is the most important thing before you pull the trigger on anything.
You would take people's statements and sort them through and not let them just get away with it. You're a gutsy guy, man. You're a smart guy. And you deal with that. There's a lot of people listening and says, I don't know that I can do that stuff, but I believe they can. What piece of advice could you give to the people who are listening to us who says, I don't know if I want to go that route?
The route is authenticity, and it's not coming from a judgmental place or a negative place, but you're just reflecting back what somebody said. Now, I don't put on my psychology hat very often these days. But the reality is, when you're talking with the person, they'll usually tell you what they think the first time. And if that didn't sound quite right to them, then they start to backpedal away from it or sweeten up the soup a little bit. You know what I mean? But when you listen to people, they'll tell you what I think first. This can't be done. This isn't going to work. These safety people are always after me to do all these things, and then they will back away and with the platitudes. But I'm all about safety, and I support fully, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep people. Okay, well, that's not what you said the first time. So when you call it out, people are listening or thinking about that later after you go away. Like, I think it's true. I think I do that. And the goal is to not be offensive, obviously, in doing this, but it's about taking a little psychosocial risk. Everybody talks about psychosocial risk like it's going out of style. I'm like, what risk are you taking, these days is what I always say. Put it out there. The worst you can get is some feedback that someone didn't, care for what you said, or maybe you could say it differently, but you're having a good, engaging conversation about, okay, my goal is to make things safer here. That's where this is coming from. Did you think it was coming from somewhere else? Because that's not.
How are you creating those relationships so that it'll enable for this type of discussion? It's one thing, that if you have the ability to bring in someone from the outside, it can be very beneficial because it gives a lens that you might not have. But if you don't have that, do the homework, get a relationship, right? Make it so that you can have a discussion that ultimately leads to self-awareness. I mean, what your thoughts on that, David?
I suppose that's what a good consultant does. And so, and Dekra is very large. We're the biggest safety organization in the world. And we are not for profit as well, for what that's worth. And it really, I think, matters to dig in and say, hey, I can't do my job without my relationships and my connection. I mean, that's what a good safety professional, I think, would agree anyway, is, we do our work through relationships. But just, wear your heart on your sleeve and let people know it's really not possible for me to do a good job here without you. Would you help me, to do this? And people want to help if they know what to do. So as soon as you have an executive, if you put them in a meeting about safety and they don't know their role or what you want of them, they will not return to that meeting because you wasted my time and I felt dumb and not sure what am I supposed to do here. And we don't want to go to meetings like that. What am I here to do? And how can I help? What do you want? Do you want money from me? Do you want engagement? I will do anything. But do tell me what it is and don't let me just sit and try to figure it out on my own and what my role is in this meeting or in this program or initiative or whatever. That's what I have found is authenticity with clarity about who's doing what.
I think that's a level that many folks aren't thinking about, though. When they come to the meeting, they just think, well, I've got my thing that's important to me. I've got my pitch I want to make. And so they'll all figure it out. But they got to take time to put themselves in that person's shoes and say, how can I help that person to know where we're going and what I need from them? That will make this whole thing run smoother. But they haven't taken time to think through that part.
Yeah, it's almost like folks sometimes miss the forest through the trees, Merle, is what I think. Before you walk into a pivotal meeting, really check yourself, because oftentimes we're thinking about other people and how can I do something with somebody else in this meeting, or is this person going to come for me in a meeting and not support my ideas? It's much more helpful to think about yourself in terms of, how will I show up here? What do I have to say? And look at what you're going to say. Is this too tactical and doesn't have enough breadth for executive level people in particular to get dig their teeth into? Because they want to help. They do not want to be the doer. Someone else will help with the doing. If you want to talk about making big change, you'll get executives lean in. But sometimes safety professionals will be very tactical. Hey, we're thinking about redoing all of our policies and procedures, and this, everybody's out. Everybody's zoned out. Great. You do that. You figure that out. That sounds like a great idea. Why am I having a conversation about it? I don't know. If you couch it more in, hey, we're seeing people sometimes take action in a way that's not aligned with this team. We see people working in a way sometimes that's not safe, and you wouldn't approve of that. You would say, why are people doing that? And the reality is that they're not sure what to do, and we haven't been clear as a senior team on how to do specific tasks in a standardized way. And that's where you guys come in, is we want to make sure that that's loud and clear from you, that your voice is heard, that this is how you see the difference in tone. Fixing documents versus I want to get your fingerprint into this, as I mentioned before, is a whole different conversation. It's where you get engagement, you get buy-in, you get people at the top sending emails, if you like, to say, I have voted for this. I want this to happen. Everybody on board? Hope so. That's where the safety professional really does their best work, is through influence and relationships, as you said.
Is there, in your background of psychology and guiding people to be safe, are there some just fundamental ideas that sometimes we as safety professionals just overlook and miss in guiding people to make safe choices? I know that seems very simple, but I think sometimes we miss it. What do our safety professionals need to be aware of?
I would go back to focus on what you're doing, what you're trying to get done, and less about, I need to make other people do something that they don't want to do. I was doing some sort of coaching support work with a vice president level safety person, and they had some angst about their job, and the performance isn't where I would like it to be, and the tone was, this is my fault. This is on me. And I said, can I just tell you that you're a really good safety professional? I mean, thousands of safety professionals I interact with. You're in the very top tier there, man. You're great at this. Why do you think you're not? Well, because we're not getting the results. I said, your colleagues are not doing their job. That's the problem. You're over-functioning and you're begging people to do things differently. But all we need is just a step change with some operations people. And they're happy to do the step change, so there's not a pushback there. It's just an over-functioning of a safety professional, which happens in situations where safety is maybe trending in the wrong direction, so they need to ratchet things up. And I say, you don't need to ratchet anything up. You need to ask some questions about, how come you guys are allowing this to happen? What's changed? I'm here to support and to help, but this is your organization. These people work for you, not me.
I want to go back to what you talked about with ratcheting up. You find that a lot of times when safety professionals feel this way and they do ratchet up, it actually takes them off course of an effective solution because they're almost distracted.
Yeah, I've seen some relationships be damaged because there's, people calling each other on public calls, like shaming if you want, but you're not engaged, this kind of thing. And it's normal to have those feelings that maybe, because sometimes people are not engaged. They're just not. That's fair. But why is that resonating with you in that sort of irritating way? So I always say, if you're irritated or angry, your voice shouldn't go loud, like an angry mom or dad. I'm just going to yell it now. And I've never raised my voice to my kids. Come on. When I do, though, in my head, I go, I'm out of control. This means I don't know it. As a recovering child psychologist, I don't know what I'm doing in this moment right now. Why am I raising my voice? But people do it either with a raised voice or even just a not nice email, whatever it looks like. But it's if you check that for yourself and say, what is it about me that's reacting to this? And it's typically, I'm not in control here. And I forgot that I'm not. I just have influence here. And I need to partner, have relationships, have honest conversations that challenge. That's what I'm not doing. I'm just perseverating about an irritation that somebody is not doing safety in the way that I wish that they would. And it can drive you crazy as a safety professional, I think.
So is that idea of, what do I really have control over compared to what I have influence over? Is that something that just gets us out of sorts as times as safety professionals? I can't control these people. What's wrong with that?
I think when we go to our bad place, I think, anybody in work, whether it's safety or it doesn't matter what your job is, you go to a place, that's work frustration, right? It's, I wish for something to be different, or I wish that decision wasn't what it was, because it doesn't make sense to me. Well, you can wish for it if you want to. It's already decided. We're moving on. So I think you need to figure out, where can I make the most hay? And who am I going to do that with? And it's fun to attract other people into the mix. I quite like when you have a little quorum of people that are involved in some transformational change. And there's some people not involved. And if you're doing it right, you'll get the emails. How come I'm not on that meeting? I heard the COO is chairing this and I'm not involved. Why is that? I'm like, I don't know why. I don't know why you're not involved. Would you like to be involved? But that's typically somebody that was, well, why would we involve them? They don't seem to want to be involved. And now all of a sudden they do. So, that could be a little bit of politics there for sure. But the reality is, if you're doing good work, it draws other people in. There's a CEO that made a good message not too long ago. And I just loved, and he was not prompted or coached to say this, and not on teleprompter, just very off the cuff. But that video message goes out to everybody in the business. And he said, we could have never dreamed that our focus on safety would have transformed the culture in the way that it has. And it's like, that's what it looks like, though. That's the power of safety that all of us that work in this space, that's the power that you have. And the question is how much you tap into it, right? So it stops becoming ticky-tack and programmatic. There's some ticky-tack, aspects to safety that we have to, you have to do it. Do you have all your ducks in a row for, lockout, tagout? That's a great thing to be ticky-tacky about. It's important to do that. But you don't want to leave the cultural stuff. That's ours too. Like, we have a space there as safety professionals, and don't be afraid to be in that space with your, operations colleagues, and don't leave it just to them, because they might not be comfortable in that space, or maybe just not thinking about it right now because they're so busy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of safety professionals that might be listening are still figuring that out. We all sometimes academically, we default to that compliance. And in reality, safety is people. That's why most of us got into this field anyway, is to help people. And so, to your point about, the ticky-tack, the lockout, tag out, absolutely. But those aren't where you'll see those marked improvements. And has that been your experience as well?
It is. I think it's that holding back sometimes that people will do, safety people in particular. We want folks to have that compliance focus. That's the foundation of the house, is how we do that. And, legalities that we have to, stay in tune to as they are updated. Definitely part of it. But I think that's too much of a part sometimes. I would go as far as to say that's sort of a lower tier of safety person. So advancing as a safety person is, you keep that nice and strong, but you're building on top of that. I'm a person that knows how to talk about culture and leadership, and I will continue to escalate things to whoever will listen to me. But we cannot have, certain things going on that would put people at risk, and us just go, well, that's for somebody else, to deal with. No, we're all in it to win it, and you got to fight through it. It's the hardest thing a safety professional does, in my opinion, is speak up in disagreement to operations leaders that they work with every day, and just say, I think you're making a mistake. I think it's not good enough. I'm really worried somebody's going to get hurt here under your leadership. Those are hard things to say. But if you have a good relationship with somebody, you can say it. Everybody talks about how great of a relationship we all get along. I'm like, okay, then say it.
Well, even when you said those statements, David, you weren't like demanding, you will do this, you will do this. I think this is a problem. And that is I'll call it a softer way that gets your statement across. Talk to us about being willing to do that, doing it in that way, not pounding your fist and say, it's got to be this.
Yeah, it comes back to the motivators for people. People are not motivated by some person that they don't work for telling them what they need to do. And maybe they'll even do it and, tick the box. I filled in my 150 papers and Yep. It's all done. What we, in the work that we do across our customer base, what we see is the leaders that have all their paperwork turned in, so to speak, they're the ones that are having the issues, all the way up to fatalities in some cases. And so it's shocking to people that, well, but they've done all programmatically what we've asked them to do. I'm like, I know, but it's the basics, right? You haven't looked in to see culture, leadership, which is not on the list of, you can't tick and flick culture and leadership. You just can't. That's where you go sniff it out, check it out, see what people say. A lot of people will call us for assessment work to say, yeah, what do people say? Because we have great numbers, but we're seeing more incidents, and it doesn't make any sense to us or whatever. So it's good to have a poke around and see, what's really going on here in the corners, and what do people think, the humanness, as you said, about the way that work gets done, versus just I know how to contribute to an audit when someone comes and checks my books. That means it's a plant manager that knows how to do an audit, and they know what you're going to ask and what papers I have to show and all that kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, and as you use that as a performance metric, you never actually see true performance, because ultimately it's almost like using a cheat sheet on a test, and it's not really a gauge of performance. It's a gauge of reciting. And so there's a term I want to float by you, is this in human and organizational performance, blue line discovery, where here's what we think gets done, but here's what actually gets done. And do you see in your experience, David, that the ones that are chasing a better understanding of that discovery of the blue line of how work actually gets done, seem to be better positioned? It seems intuitive, but I'm looking for your opinion. Better positioned for improvement.
I would definitely say that that's a hallmark of both a safety professional and an executive and everybody in the middle. I call it the heartbeat. Do you have the heartbeat of the organization in your role, or are you just kind of flying blind here? Is that what's happening? So I quite love when people want to go out in the field, and it's not just to be seen. Someone said to me the other day, I need to get out in the field more so I'm visible. I'm like, why? What are you going to do when you get there? Do you think anybody cares if you come? So I give the gears a little bit. I'm like, what are you going to do when you get there? What's the value that you brought? Your title or your walk past and like the Pope coming through, no. It's what questions did you ask? What did you ignite in a positive way out there from an engagement point of view? So it's just that digging a little bit deeper is often what that stuff looks like.
And I think you brought up a lot of good points around a safety professional can enable an executive to be more effective in that interaction. And so during this season, we've heard the term industrial sightseeing, right? Where you go out and you ride up in your car and you wave and you shake some hands and you ask a couple high-level questions, and you alluded to that, and then you go and you leave, and no impact other than, well, they checked their box. And so, what are some of the tips that you feel where a safety professional with that relationship that has driven that self-awareness at the executive level can enable a conversation where we don't have industrial sightseeing, we have meaningful dialogue?
I think first you have to teach executives about what that looks like, because what I've seen, even just recently, there can be an assumption that that executive person or team knows what to do, or even a safety professional, like they're on site, but what did you do while you were there? So anybody can get involved in the sightseeing, I think, because it's easy and it's low risk for us to just sort of go along, and it's a happy and everything's great. But that's not what safety professionals are tasked to do, and it's not what operations leaders are tasked to do either. I was on a site in Australia not too long ago, and I was kind of having a look on generally operations there, but I did know that there was quite a serious incident that happened there, like several years, 2 years before. And so I dug into that a little bit, and I said, can you just take me to that place where that incident happened and kind of walk me through how it happened and all that? And what became apparent was the exact same situation is unfolding there still. So it's a little bit of a secret, right? And it's not anybody's fault. It's not negligence. It's a problem-solving issue. It's a very technical situation. But the business doesn't know that. It's a secret that this is happening because nobody wants to advertise. And it's like when you get a big problem, a big safety challenge, advertise it. Tell people, here's what we're doing. This is what we think is the best approach, and we really would like your feedback. And that's all the way to board of directors. I think too often, and your listeners I'm sure will identify, if you interact with board of directors level folks, too often the focus is preparing for a meeting with the board of directors so that we can look good, so that we can get through, this quarter and showcase this is what we're doing. And I think some of that is okay. I mean, you want to show up credibly, you know what I mean? We know how to run this business that you're part of, but you also want to be authentic and say, we haven't got this figured out yet. There's a customer that I work with that just sent a letter to the board of directors and said, the things that we've just done didn't work. And so we've called in some reinforcements to help out with this because we were mistaken about that. But see how the tone is different, and you don't get this weird relationship with the board of directors where it's I know you're trying to get one past me here, and you're trying to look good versus be good.
Well, the transparency of it, develops the trust.
Merle, you and I shared a story about an organization that a new CEO took over, and they were having a call, and he said, well, let's see your metrics. And they were on the verge of bankruptcy, and they were green, 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 green. He says, I'm not sure what we're measuring here, but do you people realize the organization is on the verge of bankruptcy, that this can't be accurate? But they were programmed as such that we need to show up green. And so I think, David, one of the things you're talking about with that transparency is absolutely critical. And as you are approaching these conversations, the importance of making sure, no, we're not green. No, bankruptcy is not good. So what are we actually looking at?
Yeah, some good, clean metrics. I love to sort of help companies redo their dashboards to look at what are the critical things, and then use your executive intuition to say, do you believe it? Do you think that's right, that everything's green? I don't. I just came from 3 of your locations. I'll tell you they're not green. So you want it to feel right, look right. And it's okay. You don't get annihilated if something turns yellow. And if you start down that path, you want to say, okay, why am I so worked up about this? Let's just help these folks out.
This has been for many folks, a podcast to make people think and consider things. Just in wrapping this up, you personally and your organization does really good things to help people. You're successful at. What is the ultimate secret of what you all do that helps people? Well, how would you, if you had to boil it down in a statement or two, which is hard?
So I would say it really comes down to a depth of engagement around what better looks like and what are people willing to do to get to that place to protect people and show value for people, no matter they work in safety or otherwise. It's to do with depth. I don't know anybody that's not working in safety leadership, SIF, people do all the things, HOP. That's all happening. But the question is, how's that going? Is it being done well? Is there good engagement around it? Do you understand it? So depth is what I would say that we offer at Dekra, and we'll go as deep as you want to. But I don't own the swimming pool. I just say, here's some options. Here's what you could do. What do you think you're up for, in the next year, next 5 years? What do you want to do? Let's do it.
Well, we value and appreciate your time with us and what you're doing for our podcast listeners. So thank you very much.
So good to talk to you all.
Thank you, David.
This man, John, brought a different level of thought that is worth every professional that listens to this, probably listening to this podcast not just once, but again to soak it all in. And one of the things that I noticed he talked about was this idea of having the heartbeat of the organization, being able to know where people are at and what they're doing. And then the other thing, if people listen real close, he was very precise when he would challenge other people's thoughts, not in a mean way, not in a demanding way, but to try to just raise the question, is that really accurate? Is that really true? Wise words.
Yeah, I think for me, when we talked to David, very methodical in his approach, very methodical in his thought process. And my takeaway was around advertise the challenge. So are we advertising the challenge so that we can get the support needed to create a remedy? Or are we hiding the challenge, which then inhibits our ability to solve? So that was a thought catalyst for me.
And we're very, at times, I think, fearful. Well, what if they find out I've got a problem? Well, they probably know it already.
That's right.
But might as well open up. So great stuff.
Yeah, great stuff. Can't solve a problem you don't know.
Thanks for listening to My Big Safety Challenge, a podcast produced in partnership by Dale Carnegie and BCSP, with your host, Dale Carnegie Master Trainer Merle Heckman, and John Fisher, Director of Environmental Strategy and Corporate EHS at Duke Energy Corporation. Executive produced by Joel Burgai. Directed by Giachi Liu. Edited by Jared Grio and Kyla Anderson. Editorial support from Brandon Mohaupt. Social media support from Braylon Morgan. Consulting producers are Colin Brown and Mark Sullivan. To have new episodes delivered directly to you, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. If you'd like to share your story of a safety leadership challenge you faced, email us at info@mybigsafetychallenge.com. See you next time.